Good day, my name is Terry Smith, and in this video we'll be installing a few services on our Windows Server 2012. These services include Active Directory and DNS. After the installation of these services, we'll then be promoting our server to a domain controller. So let's begin. First, you'd like to start a server manager. On the left hand side of our server manager on the dashboard, you should see a list of rules or services from which you have already pre-installed, as well as under the Tools menu. Here we can see that the services installed are the basic default services that came with my server manager. Before we begin the installation of our services, we would first like to rename our server. So go to local server, click on computer name, and change. In the field below, you will then rename the computer or the server to a name that you best desire. I've already renamed my server. After renaming your server, it will ask you to then restart. Note that anytime you make any changes or do any maintenance to your server, it will prompt you and require you to restart for those changes to be effective. After your server has been renamed, then click on Manage and you add roles and features. Here you'll be prompted with an installation wizard. Installation wizard will now then guide you through the installation of your services, both Active Directory and DNS. For the installation type, we leave it as the default role-based or feature-based installation. And under server selection, you select the server which you require or you desire to use. Under server roles, you then select the services that you require. For me, I'll do Active Directory domain. This will then prompt you to a list of features which will be installed with the service, add the features, and DNS. Add the features. During the installation of these services, we will be prompted with warnings, to which we will address at later dates. Next. For features, we will leave set as the default. Click Next. Next, and here you'll see a summary of the services and features we will be installing. Let me install. After installation is complete, I have been prompted configuration required, installation succeeded on the name of your server. You will then be required to promote this server as a domain controller. In the domain controller configuration wizard, you'll be asked a series of questions. You'll be asked to add a domain controller to an existing domain, add a new domain controller to an existing forest, or add a new forest. Here we will click add a new forest. Under the root domain name, we will type the name of our domain. In my case, I'll use thai.com. Click next. On the domain controller options, leave the forest functionality level and the domain functionality as the same, because we'll be installing this under Windows Server 2012. The specific domain controller capabilities will be already default selected and grayed out, because there will be a new forest or new domain controller will be setting up. Then select a strong password. Note that a password must have a capital letter, a symbol, and a number. Because the DNS server hasn't been set up, a warning will then appear. Under additional options, it will prompt you to set a NetBIOS name. A NetBIOS is usually used for legacy equipment. Just a quick note for here, this domain name can be more than 15 characters long, so I suggest leaving it at your appropriate. As you can see, mine says Thai, the name that you use for the creation of your domain. Paths will be where your server services will install any additional features. And here you'll see a summary of or review of the steps taken to configure your domain controller. On the prerequisite checks, as long as these warnings aren't read, you are good to go. As previously said, these warnings will be handled at a future date. You can now install. After installation is complete, you'll then be required to restart, as you can see here. Upon successful restarting of our server, we would see that on the dashboard we now have two new services, ADDS and DNS. Under tools, we now see that we have a bunch of new services that we can run. One of which we'll be using at a later date is Active Directory, users and computers. Thank you for watching this video. Please like and subscribe to my channel.